Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Somos Mas, the official podcast of Somos Mas NM and your source for the latest news and notes on New Mexico United and the New Mexico Runners. My name, of course, is Seth Bidoff. Joining me this evening, we've got a full house, including a special guest this evening. We've got Jacob Terrell, Earl Nieto, and a fan favorite, New Mexico United 2022 Humanitarian of the Year, Daniel Bruce. Brucey, thank you so much for coming on this evening. We do appreciate you being with us. And it's a great honor for us to have you on the show this evening.
No, thank you guys so much. Like I just mentioned to you guys personally, just really, it's always an honor to be with people who do a lot for the club and do a lot for the state. And I just love meeting people who love football and love this club and chatting through whatever it is maybe you have on the table. But, thank you so much for having me on. It's a real honor.
Yeah, we're excited. Jacob reached out to David earlier this week, late last week, and helped get this set up for us. And you are the first, we mentioned it just a minute ago, you're the first active player we've had here on the show. So we're super excited to have you on and talk through some different things with this evening. And guys, real quick, if you are in the chat over on Facebook, YouTube, we popped it up there. If you're in the chat, throw your questions and comments over in there for Brucey, for us. We'll get those throughout the show. And as always, we appreciate you guys being here. First off, I want to start with, first of all, congratulations, 2022. I mentioned already, Humanitarian of the Year for the club. It's your second time winning that honor for the club. Talk to us a little bit about that honor and the work you've been doing with Good Blokes Jogging.
Yeah, any sort of award that's been voted on by fans and people involved around the club just means so much. That that level of connection between player and club and fans. As you guys know, I think is extremely important and absolutely vital for fans to feel a connection with players on the field and feel like they are represented on the field. But extending further than that, I think it's important that we're out in the community and we're with people and we're doing everything we can to, yes, raise awareness about the game and how much positivity that can bring in the public here, but also many other things to do with general health and just one of those ways. A couple of years ago, the little initiative we had with Good Blokes was just to bring about small little help in helping people kind of get out there and be jogging together communally as a group and enjoying time outside. Coming out of COVID, it was obviously a difficult period, but getting people back outside and being out there in the sun, jogging together, it was just an amazing, some of my favorite memories in New Mexico with those moments. And yeah, it's just those awards will mean just as much to me, if not more than anything we achieve in soccer, because it just highlights that, how important relationships are in communities and especially from player to fan relationships as well. So that meant a huge amount. And I think there's more we can be doing and there's more we will do in future years. And I'm definitely extremely thankful for every relationship that I've built here.
Speaking of those relationships, you came out here 2019, one of the inaugural players. You quickly became a fan favorite. What has it meant to you to see the support from the fans, particularly after the COVID year, getting back to the stadium and, getting that first home match in, 500 some odd days, and then just the turnout that the club saw this season out of the Lab?
Yeah, I mean, the fans are the reason this club exists. There's no question about it. This club is nothing without the people that work hard all week for that ticket, buy that ticket, and come into the stadium and support us. I mean, we are absolutely nothing without supporters like you and people that not only live in Albuquerque, but come from all over the state to the games. I mean, when I walk out onto that field, every time, whether it's a preseason game at our training field or whether it's at home in the Lab or whether we're playing away and it's a small pocket of away fans, there are chills down my spine every time to know that these people have come and they've come to watch us play and support us and see us win. And that is just just an absolutely, it's an incredible feeling, and it's along with it being a fantastic feeling, there's tied with it a huge responsibility that you have to perform, and you have to give back to these fans that have done all this hard work to come and support you. You have to give back with the amount of effort and the quality of effort that you put onto the field for 90 minutes, whether it's 90 minutes or 1 minute. And yeah, that will never get old for me, ever. And when I'm done playing, I will miss it more than anything. That knowing that how many people have worked so hard all week for that ticket, and they've bought that ticket and come to the game, and that's just one of the most incredible things. And when I'm done playing, I hope to be doing the same thing and supporting teams around New Mexico. But it's a real honor, extremely grateful. I don't think it's even sunk in yet how incredible our fans are, and I have no shame in saying I do believe we have the absolute best fans in the league. They're just unbelievable how the quality of loyalty and support that we receive every home game is just absolutely incredible.
So many things that came to mind when you were talking there, and I don't really know where to go from there. But I'll start off with this. You mentioned rewarding the fans that are there with your effort on the pitch, and I think that's kind of what made you a fan favorite from day one. Was you were just all over the place and gave like 110% all the time. What kind of talk about what that with that mindset that you have? Do you just, has it always been that way? Is it where in year one were you just trying to earn your place, or and so on and so forth? Just the amount of effort that you put out on the pitch is what endured in order. I've been sick, guys, so let's relax just a little bit. All right. Yeah, I'll let you take it away. I'll let you take it away.
I absolutely, yeah. I think I know where you're going with that. I growing up, my dad played rugby. He wasn't a football player, but he said I can absolutely play football if I want to play football, but I have to make sure that every time I step foot on a field, that I give 110%, and I give absolutely everything that I have. And then going to college, playing under similar coaches had the same mentality. I always want to make sure that aside from the result, my touch may be off one day, it may be on one day, my shooting ability may be on one day, maybe off one day, but I always want to make sure that that I can leave the field knowing that I've given absolutely everything, and I'm not just relying on those small moments of a touch here or there, or the landing of the ball here or there. I want to make sure that first and foremost I've given everything I can. And another area of it is that in my philosophy of the game, I do also believe if you're the team that are more willing to cover the ground, to win your duels, to be better than the player you're playing against, you give yourself, you're not going to win every game, but you give yourself an unbelievable platform to go and win a game. And I see some of the teams that I love to watch, in an off season on television, and it always seems every time that the teams that are more willing to do the hard yards, to cover the ground, and to win their duels are the teams that are coming out on top and have that cornerstone to be able to perform. And the last thing I'd say is, when I'm lining up on that field, and there can be a lot of distractions in this game of football with, whether it's something was off with your routine, or, they've got thousands of fans either screaming your name or they're screaming horrible things about your name. There's always some level of distraction. And I always try and approach a game by looking the opposing player in the eye and saying, no matter what happens today, I have to be better than you. So if you're going to have if I'm going to have a bad game, I'm making sure you're having a worse game. Yeah. And making sure I'm going to run past you to try and score, and I'm going to run past you to try and defend. And if that's the baseline of every single game, then after that, I think that's when we can build and talk on tactics and spaces to game and touch and things. But for the way I see the game and what I believe in the game, that's the most important thing for me. And I think you're right in the level of connection that I found with New Mexican people was actually the way that I approached the game of football was very similar to the way that the average New Mexican approaches their day-to-day life. You know, a lot of New Mexican people, they get up, hardworking people, you know, they've got a good job to do. They've got, and that sort of, I don't know, I felt that connection with the fans, you know, after the first year coming through, that, you know, these are hardworking people and they're spending their money to come and watch us play. So no matter whether we win, draw, lose, they better know that each and every player has given their absolute all on that field, and it's been worth their while working all week for that ticket.
Awesome. Yeah. And then, so you just signed another 2-year extension with us. So that'll, after that contract's over, you'll be with us for 6 years.
Yeah.
Is that, how much do the fans play a part of that? How much is New Mexico a part of that? Is it just, do you consider this place home now? Is it something like that? Or do you just really believe in what we're building here?
I love the club, and I love first and foremost the ethos of the club is very much in line with kind of how I see the game and like to live my life, was in kind of hard work, diligence, humility is kind of the core of what we have here, and that's, you know, a place that I want to be. That's a culture I want to be in. And then you start adding layers of how incredible the support and the fans are here is just, I mean, that is absolutely unbelievable. And knowing, you know, how, you know, the relationships that I felt that I've formed with the fans in the stadium has been, you know, something that it'd be very, very difficult for me to ever let go of. And adding to that, I do feel like this club has had such a good structure and such quality coaches and players that we should have achieved more than we have these past 4 years. And that's something that plays into my decisions as well. You know, I want to win something with this club for this state. And I just, you know, would be a great shame if, you know, I felt like I left this club knowing there was more to do, and I never want to feel that way. And I think whatever, you know, role that I'm playing in the club, I want to make sure that we get the absolute maximum out of every year we can, and ultimately bring silverware back to this state that it deserves from how quality the fans and support is. But no, I'm very, very excited for these next couple of years. I want to, you know, continue with the base that we have, but add layers and grow and become an even better team, a bigger team, become a better player myself in areas that I can. And no, I'm just really, you know, very grateful that the club want to keep me around, and if they want to keep me around and I still think that I can help the team in some capacity, then it's something too good to ever think about throwing away.
One of the things that we've talked about in the past is the physicality of play in the USL, and you're not exactly a big guy. And what we've seen you go toe to toe with some of the biggest guys in the USL, particularly, you know, guys on like San Antonio and some of the other clubs. With guys like Christian Nava or other guys, you know, around, you know, Armando Moreno, what do you got? Is there anything specifically that you work with those guys on being physical with the guys who are bigger in stature, and how does that help translate to the performance on the pitch?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think ultimately the way you train has a huge impact on the way you're going to be on a Saturday. And I don't believe you can just switch a switch on and be a certain player on a Saturday and then switch it off for the rest of the week. You have to train the way you want to play. I think it was Ferguson who said, we don't just win championships. We train like champions, and championships seem to follow. And I'm a firm believer that every day you have to train in the same way that you want to perform on the Saturday. And so training sessions are made extremely competitive. There's winners, there's losers. There's constant, you know, combat, and it's always in that nice sweet spot. It's never boiling over. And it's within the lines. And I think it's important that we approach training that same way that we're going to play a game on a weekend, and having that constant kind of competition makes players primed and ready for the Saturday. Now, if you're talking about things more practically on the field, I think things like when the ball's in the air, establishing first contact, securing the ball first. So not always necessarily thinking, how am I going to get forward, but making sure that you actually secure the ball in those grey areas is an important thing. And then, establishing first contact when the ball's in the air or bouncing around is important as well. Making sure you shield the ball, protect it, retain possession for your teammates. And ultimately, just not being afraid. If the ball's there, either I always think either he's going to chicken out or I'm going to chicken out. Very rarely, both players are going to go in and smash. So I just think I may as well go in every time. And if I get pulled off this field on a stretcher, then there's worse ways to go, isn't there?
So one way you can't get pulled off of a stretcher. So obviously everyone here knows I'm a video gamer. I play games. What is it like for you knowing that you are in a video game?
Am I actually in a video game? I don't. Really?
Yes, you are.
Which one is it? So you'll be educating me here because I'm not the biggest video gamer by any means, but
so since you can correct me
itself?
if I'm wrong, but I believe it's esports or eFootball.
eFootball, yeah.
eFootball.
The entire so the USL has a
eFootball.
deal. Yeah, the league has a deal with eFootball, which is made by Konami. So pretty much the entire
Okay.
club has been in there. Their character models, the kits, everything. So like you guys are playable in
Oh, wow.
eFootball. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm learning things this evening because I didn't know that. I'm not the biggest gamer. I've tried here and there, and I've played little bits of games here and there, but I didn't know that. So, have you ever played with New Mexico United in that game?
Yes.
Am I any good?
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's really cool to see because most of us are familiar with FIFA, and obviously the USL has never been a part of that. But with the deal with Konami, the entire league is in there. Everyone's playable. You can be signed in like the Ultimate Team mode.
Nice.
And so I've signed you guys. A buddy of mine has signed like Christian Nava and some other guys from the USL.
Yeah.
And you can like develop train up the player cards to where they do improve.
Wow.
But when you compare you to like the rest of the USL, like your pace is a lot quicker than a number of guys.
Really?
Yeah, if you throw
See,
yourself
that's
up
interesting
against
because
Mane.
I don't see myself as a particularly quick player. Like in an hour, like over the space of like a longer distance, I've not been one of those players that can like open up and really be fast. If I'm thinking about fast players in our squad, I'm thinking about Yerzy is a fast player, like Austin Yearwood, Suggsy, just fast, like really quick. And I'm not quite there, but 5 or 10 yards, like short, sharp stuff, can cover the distance pretty quickly. But if I'm having to open up the legs, then might be in trouble.
We were just kind of curious. We hadn't really asked anybody about this because it's a fairly new thing for the league and for the club. But yeah, they've got pictures of you guys, the character models, like
Oh, wow.
the kits look absolutely fantastic in the game too. So it's a really interesting thing to see. So we were kind of curious about that. Getting back to more real life, obviously the season didn't quite end up the way that everyone wanted. What's one of the biggest takeaways you have from this season heading into the offseason and then next year?
I think the first takeaway is that our home form has to improve. I think we wanted to approach the home games in that, we have to win by, so many goals because that's what it must be difficult for the opponent to come here and we have to win by so many goals. And whereas going away from home, our attitude is very much, if we win this game by 1-0, that's great. We'll take the 3 points and we'll move on. And although it wasn't a said thing, I think it just, the subconscious can work this way in football sometimes, and it shouldn't. And it's an area that we definitely can improve is our home form and how we not just approach, but perform in home games for long periods of the game. I think there were times where we had good moments in games, but as far as piecing together like larger performances, like really dominating performances, I think that's something that for us to be a top team, that's the next step that we can take next season. And I think just continuing to grow as a team, to play front foot, exciting football. We're at our best when we're creating loads of chances. There's balls coming in the box. There's guys, putting their life on the line to block shots from the opponent. And I think we can get to a point where we're doing the same thing to try and score. When the ball's coming across the box, can we have players really like laying out, or diving header, or just having that all or nothing mentality, attacking as well as defending, because we have that mentality in front of our own goal, especially away from home this season. We were just extremely rigid and difficult, and we would get in the way of shots and block shots and be we would kind of put the body on the line in our defending box. And we have to have that same mentality when attacking as well, taking chances, shots, crosses, getting across our defender, getting across your man. And I think that's just another layer that we have, but we can see that on a more consistent basis moving into next season.
Looking at the Western Conference, obviously it's one of the toughest places to play in all of, I would say, U.S. soccer. San Antonio obviously had a fantastic year. When you look at the opponents that you faced, is there anyone in particular that you felt like you guys really just kind of had their number this season, but didn't quite get the results? Or was there someone that, like, okay, we feel confident going into this, and then you're able to translate what you practice during the week into the weekend?
The season is funny when you're a player, because very rarely are we looking at the whole league, and we're very rarely looking at this team's this. It's very much focused at the player attention on that next game. So we finish preseason, and the focus isn't, hey, by this time we want to be second, or by this time we want to be first, or we've got this chunk of games. The whole focus that week is on that one first game. So the training, the physical load, the routines, the gym, everything is about that first game. And then you play that game, and we maybe have a day and a bit reflection, and bang, we're straight onto the next game. The next game might be a Wednesday, 3 days, and then you have another week game, Wednesday game. And when that happens, you rarely have time. If you're thinking too much about the patterns and what's gone on, and okay, we do well against these, we lose against these, then the next game's already gone. The season will have just fallen through your fingers like that. And in my fourth year, I'm trying to get into this better rhythm of just literally nothing else matters apart from the next game that we're playing. What's one or two things we can learn from that last game, and how are we going to implement that, to become a better side in this next game? And I think that shows it. I mean, the things like the San Antonio performance away from home, if we'd have been a team who'd look back at the whole season, all our performances, all of their performances, there's no way we come out of there with a result. But because the squad is more focused on just the single games going along, same thing with Colorado at home, because the squad is more focused on just the next game coming up and how to apply ourselves for that game, I think it makes it easier for us as players to be able to keep things as narrow focused as possible, which is what we need to do.
Yeah, I definitely think that works to the advantage of you guys. When you're able to, you have, like you said, you focus on just that one game, whereas the supporters, they kind of take things as a whole. They look at stretches of 3, 4, 5 matches in a row. Even us as members of the media, we kind of look at, okay, what's happening with the club, what's trending. I saw that. We are media, thank you very much. And so at times the supporters tend to be a bit down on their performances. And we've seen you guys in practice. We've seen you guys before matches, after matches, and we see how much those when there is like a last minute equalizer or something, like how much it does get to you guys. Like, we've seen the emotion, and so it's hard for us to really translate that to people other than say, hey, look, yeah, they were impassioned, they were upset by this. You can tell. I mean, there were matches where only Zach came up and talked to us after the match. But from your perspective as a player, how do you feel that supporters should look at stretches like that where things just don't seem to be going well?
Yeah, look, ultimately, the supporters of this club, what they feel and what they voice, if they can be right at times, if they're feeling like what they're seeing on a field isn't representative of who we are as a club and our culture and ethos, that's something that I would take extremely to heart. If players, they aren't feeling like players are, doing the things that we talked about before, covering the ground necessary, winning duels, applying, full, effort onto the field. In the course of a season, there's going to be, ups and downs of a still relatively young club. But like I said before, these people have worked hard all week in a town 2 hours away from where we are here. They've driven all the way down to the stadium and watch their team play. And it's hard for me as a player to criticize anything a fan might say in that sense, because of what they've sacrificed to come and support us. Now, if we're talking about football and tactics, there's not one way you can approach a game. There's many different ways that you can approach any given game, and you have to be able to, as players, problem solve in the moment, but generally choose one and execute it. But look, supporters of sport in history and moving forward are going to be extremely happy when their team wins, and they're going to be upset when their team loses. And I think that's part of being a supporter and a fan of a club. And I think that's important. The emotion and feeling that, the feeling that sport gives you, it makes those wins, even greater and even better. And there's always going to be, moments and seasons which, as a professional, you wish had gone a different way and you wish you'd have done other things. And but I don't feel a sense of, we should be living in this world where everyone's, just turns a blind eye to anything they don't like and to anything that they don't think is right. I think if people have, if people aren't happy about a certain situation, then they're in their rights to feel that way. But as players, then the season is, like I said, it's too short for us to get hung up on, a small thing that's happened in a game that's maybe not a trend, because your natural response is to think, oh, this happened, so we're this type of team, or it's now a trend. When you actually look at the data that were presented in training, or that we have available to us, and some things actually aren't a trend. And so there's times that, as players, we have to be accept that we can be wrong and we can have made the wrong choice. But the one thing that we can't accept is a lack of effort, a lack of baseline approach to a game. A willingness to cover the ground, to be better than your opposing man on the day. I think very tangible things like that is the very baseline that this club and the people of this state deserve from the players for New Mexico United.
Yeah, so we talked. I mean, last season it was touch and go. We were obviously upset at times, as I know the players were, like Seth talked about. But after the season that we had, I kind of want to put that in the rearview mirror, kind of look ahead. We're entering off season, our off season here. What's a Brucey off season look like? What do you got planned for this off season? Is it different? Are you doing anything different this year compared to other off seasons? Are you going to be able to go back to England for an extended period of time, or are you going to stay here in New Mexico?
Yeah, so usually when the season ends, obviously when it's a disappointing end, like it always is if you don't win something, generally it's good to let the body just rest and the mind rest from football, and kind of, switch off a little bit for 2 weeks. But about 2.5 weeks is about my limit. That's how far I can go without feeling like I need to be doing something. Fortunately, we have access to an amazing performance enhancing gym called Elevate here in town. They're brilliant. The coaches are fantastic, and we have access there, whenever we want. And this season we'll have official programs that will start in probably a few weeks' time, but a number of us are in there already, just doing bits to tick over. And alongside that, I'm also kind of furthering my coaching, and so I've been doing a lot, bits here and there, shadowing people. But I've got my UEFA and USSF C licenses, and I applied for my B license, which I've now been on for about a month and a half. So I just got back last week from Kansas, which we had our first in-person meeting for the B license with a load of USL and MLS players, which was really cool. It's a steep learning curve, a lot of information for me to take in, but I enjoy coaching. Just this evening, I was with one of the clubs in town, just shadowing some of the coaches, and then I went from there to an indoor facility to watch some of the little kickers play just before I got on this call. So doing a lot of coaching and spending time with the next generations of players who are going to play for this club, and alongside that, just ticking over physically. And then in December, I'll be going back to England in mid-December for a few weeks to see the family before coming back out again for early for pre-season.
Has any of your family made it out here for a match the last 4 years, or did COVID kind of put a kibosh to that?
Yeah, no, none of the family have managed to come out for a game. But just this last season, 5 of my best friends from England, growing up with, they did come out for a week, and they loved it. They just thought this state was amazing. Just the natural beauty, the people, the time that they had is one of the best that they'd had in a long time. So it was great to see them out here, and it was just that was a really great memory for me this season, having some of my best friends that I grew up playing the game with and going to school with come out here.
Yeah, I know that's something that you and I had actually spoken about it before, especially during the COVID year. Just I think it's got like a little one-off conversation about seeing your folks, and I'm sure, have you been back since the travel restrictions have kind of eased up, or will this be your first time back?
Yeah, so I didn't go back. I basically just decided to that chunk of the 2 years when COVID was happening, but both those years I just decided to stay here, which was great. I loved it. Developed a lot of new friendships and relationships through that time, and but I stayed here for that chunk. So there was about a 2-year period there where I didn't go home. But last year I did manage to go home for a few weeks, and then it'll be the same again this year. I like going home, seeing the family, seeing everyone that I know, and then it usually gets to that time, start of January, where I start needing to get a ball back at the feet and training again, and yeah.
I'm curious. So because I remember, when the article came out about you getting your coaching license, that was something I had on my list I wanted to ask you about this evening. You've been shadowing some, I'm assuming probably like Rio or something like Rio Rapids or, AYSO here in town. Any chance we'll see you at like one of the local tournaments anytime soon on the touch line, or is that still something that you're moving into?
Well, I was just, I'd coached with the academy, New Mexico Academy, with my C license a few years ago, and I've done bits of work with Luke and Junro, who are there now. And so I will be working with them a bit more moving forward. I was just at the high school state finals at Cleveland High School just last Saturday, I think it was. I had such a good time. I did not expect it to be like that. I mean, I walked in and it was an absolute event, and I was meant to just be watching one game, but I stayed and watched a few and watched the next game as well. And I just had such a great little time, meeting the players and watching some football, and I thought it was brilliant. And so, things like that around town, 100%. That's kind of things that I want to be doing. I want to be in and around the soccer scene, youth development, girls, boys in New Mexico. That's something that I'm really passionate about. It's something that I think is so important on a number of different levels for youngsters to be playing this game, and working with the women's team with UNM. Heather and Carly, just two great coaches for me to learn a lot off. And I'm still relatively young as a professional to be kind of turning the wheels of coaching, because a lot of it's more players coming towards the end of their physical career that they're starting to go into coaching. But I have a passion for it. I really enjoy working with kids who are intrigued and involved in the game and have good quality. I mean, I was watching, I don't know, they were probably 10, 11-year-olds today at the indoor facility here in town, the Little Kickers, and some of the football I saw. I mean, there's no way I was playing that level of football when I was 10 years old. And it just shows how quickly the game, moves and gets better and improves. And I want to be a part of that. There's a lot for me to learn, but I want to be around those youngsters playing the game, and working with the academy is something that is going to be a big part, I think, of my next, stint here at the club.
So I have a question. This one's a little off topic. It's definitely not I guess it's soccer related still. So of all the players, sorry, it's been a long week, so my questions are coming from like left field right now. So it's been so with all the players that you play against, we can name a few. Which one gets under your skin the most, and why is it Yuma?
Well, the past few years I've played more out wide, so I've not really come up against as many centre backs recently. That's a very good question, and not something it's not something that players think about too much as far as who gets under our skin. I think if I'm playing against someone and I feel like I'm under their skin, then I feel like I'm performing better than them, and so as players, you don't really, I don't know, it's not something you necessarily think about too much, but you come up against good quality players who, really good players, and you play against them in many different teams, and it's obvious to see the quality of player in the USL is increasing year by year. I mean, the lad, just thinking of one at random, Enzo Martinez, playing for Birmingham, came here and he was he's just a brilliant player, and you come up against players who are very, very good, and they're sharp and their movement's phenomenal, and a lot of experience, and so any player who comes here and plays against us here and does well gets under my skin. That's annoying, when players play well against us, and we have to try and nullify the threats of oppositions. So it's important of us to know about the quality of the opposition we play, but no one that I can think of at the top of my head that would make me angry from doing nothing.
I have another question. So there's actually a debate that goes on in the chat about every week. Just about every week. It did happen last week, but it was kind of happening this week. Are you Team Earl or are you Team Jacob?
What's this for?
So the war is who's more cooler.
What it is Earl wants his ego fed, and every time Robert, who is a San Antonio fan, I feel like we have more San Antonio fans in the chat most of the time. Every time they get on, they throw in a Team Earl or a Team Jacob, and Robert's really gone to Earl's head. His forehead's getting bigger and bigger. See, I can make that joke because David's here, but he didn't tell me I can't make a forehead joke. And so he just wants you to say Team Earl, which I'm okay with because I don't need my ego fed. So go ahead, say Team Earl.
Well, I don't like doing this, but I'm going to sit very much on the fence. I don't know. I couldn't call it either way. But it's funny. It's funny you do have some San Antonio fans in here, because I had a great moment with some of the San Antonio fans this last trip that I went on, and it's just it's always great to go to away teams, and obviously you get hurled dogs abuse at you from a load of different angles, but that's part of the game, and that's part of the game that we love, and that's brilliant, and I hope that never leaves football. But also there's some great people in these places that we go and visit, and some phenomenal fans and families, and so it's great to see, the San Antonio guys are getting involved with you guys here. That's awesome.
Yeah, they're good guys. Not Robert, but the other one that's in the chat, Harry, actually came out here, and for their match here, and me and Seth.
Oh, right, okay.
Me and Seth had lunch with him. He's very active on Twitter. He's a big proponent of USL, and we love Harry around here. He's been a great guy, and Robert's all right. I mean, I can't knock him too bad, but you mentioned that you took a couple weeks off. Try to get soccer out of your mind. Does that mean you aren't following the USL playoffs, or are you watching those games? Do you have a rooting interest that's still in there at all, or have you kind of shut that out?
Yeah, I won't lie, it's tough. It's tough to watch, knowing that we could be in there and playing. So it is tough to watch. I always keep up with the scores. I know different players and coaches around the league, and always, text and all the best. But it's difficult to. There's just still a lot of not shame, but hurt from the season that we could and should be still playing with the quality that we have in our squad, and so it's difficult to be too invested. But I'll always keep up with the scores, and if anyone that I used to play with is playing, then I'll make sure I send them an all the best text. But yeah, I'm always involved in the Premier League. Premier League is where I'm always watching, and so I stay in with that. I could never take a break from that.
That's something I did want to ask you about, because we talked about because I did an interview with you a number of years ago, and we talked about your love of the Wolves. And what are your thoughts on the Wolves season so far? I know Everton is not doing too much better. Jacob's not going to say a word because his Spurs are doing quite well. What's it going to take for Wolves to stay up this year?
Yeah, I think it's been I think we've been unfortunate. And I say that only with, not performance, but with injuries. I mean, I don't think Raul Jimenez has looked quite the same. There was moments where he came, he looked okay last season, but he was going to need help. And we've made a number of signings, and 20 minutes into one of our biggest signings debut, he tears his ACL, and it's just a horrible moment. And we've had a number of different injuries that have hurt us. I do believe we'll stay up. I mean, we've just signed Lopetegui, who is now our new head coach. was the Spanish international Real head coach, has a good resume. I don't know a huge amount about his philosophy in football, but I know he is attacking and pretty front-footed and wants us to, go forward. And I think we most certainly have the quality in the squad. But I think teams like Leeds, which I know are now very favourite in the US, are going to be teams who are going to fly forward and they're going to concede goals and they're going to try and score goals and play very exciting football, which I love. I think for a team like Wolves, for us to stay up, we almost have to do the opposite. We've got to keep things very tight. We cannot be leaky defensively. We have to go back to being very solid defensively, which historically we have for the past 5 or 6 years. And we have to kind of build off there to get results going. I feel like that's how you get results and confidence going. And so I think it's the World Cup is going to help Wolves. We've got a little break now. Let's have a reset and let's try and piece a few results together for these next half of the season, really.
David said 55 minutes, so I'm gonna try to hold to that. So we've got about 10 minutes left, and I got a question.
Don't worry, guys. Don't worry, guys.
Poor David. I have a question that I'm just kind of curious about. So when we, the silly season, as we call it on the podcast, the off season here, where we're finding out new signings and players coming back and everything like that. When the club announces, like Seymour a couple days ago, that he's coming back, he might be a bad example because he was on a 2-year contract anyways. So, so when they announce a new player or something like that, do the other players already kind of know that happens, or are you kind of finding out like we are through social media?
Most of the time, we'll find out exactly the same time as everybody else. I mean, look, if there's certain scenarios, especially when the COVID season was happening. There were, when guys decide, hey, I'm done playing, or I don't want to play anymore. We'll maybe find that information out, maybe a few days prior or something like that, just because I think players want to communicate that to their teammates themselves. But if they don't choose to do that, then more often than not, we will find out at the same time as everybody else. Yeah.
All right, we got a question over in the chat. Good friend Robert Brucey, who gave you fits in San Antonio? Who you got in the USL final, and why is Earl way better than the kid at the top right?
What does gave you fits mean? What does that mean?
I'm assuming like who on the San Antonio squad, has kind of frustrated you on the pitch. Like, could you not figure out, or, played tough against you?
I mean, San Antonio had an absolutely phenomenal season. They had a very, very stringent structure, and they stuck to it, and they performed very well within that framework. And so I think less so individual players, but the actual structure that they had was absolutely phenomenal this season, and something that I'm sure teams will learn from in seasons to come. I think that they had some brilliant players, most certainly, but I think the way that they were all able to buy into that one system style and stick to it was very, very impressive. And I think Alan has clearly got the lads playing a certain way, and the players are buying into it, and they're getting results. And I think they're a team that they're greater than the sum of their parts, and they have some brilliant players, really good players in that squad. But the things that they've been able to achieve this season is because those players have maybe sacrificed some parts of their personal game to buy into a system, and that's something that you can only applaud and appreciate, especially if you're a San Antonio fan.
To Robert's next part, who do you have in the USL Championship final? Obviously, United has played against both Lou City and San Antonio this year. You've seen both squads. Who do you think comes out on top?
I don't know. I could not say. I really have. I have no idea. I think Louisville are a very well-run professional side right from the start. When O'Connor was there, I think the culture that he established early on has carried through, and the quality of player that they have there. Just, I mean, the centre of their midfield, Del Piccolo, Tyler Gibson, just guys who are phenomenal quality, matched with an ability to run and cover the ground. And I just think they're such a good side. But then you come up against everything we've just spoken about, San Antonio, a team who buy into a system so clearly and have performed so well all season. It would be unfair to say that one of the teams is more favoured than the other. I think ultimately the great thing about football is whoever lifts that trophy at the end of the season more often than not deserves it. And I can applaud both teams for the quality that they've shown throughout the whole season as a whole. And I just hope that in the final, the team that holds the trophy ultimately deserves to win the game. And that's how I like to view the game. If you're the last one standing and you have that trophy, then you earned it and you deserve it. And I hope the best team on the night wins the game.
Going back to the contract extension and the whole process of that, was that something that you'd been working with Pete on prior to the end of the season, or was that something that came about afterwards? Was there a big discussion, or I know that you said that you want to be here for as long as the club wants you, and so what kind of went into that process?
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. I think it's for a player like myself. It's always a smooth riding situation. It's not necessarily what you might see on ESPN or NBC with all these players that we see in the Premier League. For me, ultimately, I buy into the culture and the plan that Pete has for this club, and I align myself with it. And when that's happened, the rest is very, very easy. It's not a big ordeal at all. We like to view sport and the game in a similar way, that it can, we want to win something for this state and the people of this state. And we also want to create positive outcomes for the people who live here as well. And I think when I'm aligned with both those things, it's a smooth process.
In your 4 years here in your, was it 3 off seasons, I guess it is. Have you had any other teams reach out? Have you had any interest shown from other teams? Have you even considered going anywhere else, or has it always just been smooth sailing on that front as far as just talking to United and getting that worked out right away?
Yeah, the latter. It would be, it's never been something that's been too much on my mind, to be honest. Wherever I've been and wherever I've played, I've never been the man. And growing up as a youth player, I was on all the teams that I played in. I was never the star guy. And then going up through college, same thing. I redshirted my first year in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I was never a player who was, achieving all these awards and on the front cover of this and that in college. And then Troy signed me to come here in the first year because I'd played just in summers training with the independents, who used to be in the USL just in summers, because I was a college kid and I wasn't going home to England for the summer, so I would do the odd few trainings of the USL team there. And he brought me over because he was there, and a squad part player, a player who was willing to play different positions, willing to train consistently and hard, and when given 90 minutes, we'll approach that in the same way as 2 or 3 minutes, at the end of a game. And yeah, so I think because of those things, it's, teams don't generally, they're not, I'm not a player who is going to be like on the absolute top of the list. We need to, bring him there because of just naturally who I am and who I, what I appear as a player. And a player like myself, and that's why I enjoy growing and learning more about the game and improving each year. That's kind of the thing that's most important to me practically in the game of football, is just making sure every year, how can I improve a tiny bit? How can I just get better a tiny bit? What defensively, offensively, how can I just make small tweaks to improve as a player? And that's really the most important thing to me, football wise, as a player. And apart from that, most of my attention is set on that, really. And how incredible this club is. I just feel like the most fortunate football player in the world.
So there's 6 players that have been, well, 7 if you count Weehan, even though he left for a partial season. But there's 6 players that have been here since year 1. So you, Suggs, Yearsy. Well, I had the list in my
Rashid,
head.
Dev,
Sheed, Dev, Sam, and then Weehan. Like I said, are you guys closer than? Do you guys have like a little group that you guys hang out during the off season because you guys have been here all those years, or is it everybody that comes in is just part of the family and you're all hanging out together regardless of how long they've been with the club?
Yeah, I think it's not like an exclusive clique that we have, players
Right.
who've been here
Yeah.
from game one and they're slowly whittling down. There's certainly an underlying bond from players who've been here from day one. And, that's in part because of we've had more time together, we've experienced more together. And in part, that's just because, we know in each other we're players who bought into the culture 100%. Right. And we're players who will leave it all on the field. And that's, something that it's easier for me to get along with someone who has that same mentality. And if you've stayed here for a long time, generally it is because you show you're part of what, the club is, and you embody that. And so it's easy to get along with guys like that. But by no means, exclusively. I mean, some of, my best friends on the team and best teammates, they can be here one year and off the next. It's, this world of sport can be a revolving door at times. We don't want it
Right.
to be. We want to bring quality people who are quality players through the door and keep them here. But that's not always the way it is. But there is that bond. But every player that comes through the door, if we make sure that they have ultimate respect, is shown to them, and in return they have to buy into the culture of what we believe here in the club.
With year 1, I know with the fans, me personally, it was kind of a life-changing season, and I know a lot of the fans have talked about the differences between year 1 and the following years. Does year 1 kind of stick out to you in any way, shape, or form as a special or more special year than anything else? Or because to me, I mean, with what the club has done for the community and the state, and to have is pre-COVID obviously, so to get multiple games with 15,000 fans and to see what soccer can do to bring together a community, which is really unlike. I mean, I've followed almost every other sport my whole life aside from soccer. I really didn't start following soccer until United was announced and kind of came into the stratosphere here. And so to see what it did, just really did a lot of things in me that I just hold that first year kind of special. And I was just curious if some of the players that have been here for year one, if they realized how special it was to some of us fans.
That will always be one of the most memorable years of my entire life. I mean, that was incredibly special for every one of us players who've been here from day one, especially myself. Just the connection that we began with you guys then, the quality that was on the field. It just seemed like things fell into place at the right time, and sometimes things do like that in life, and that will never change. That first year, it was the first year, and so no matter what will have happened, it will have been the start of something special, and so we will always remember it being that first year that we began this kind of amazing journey that we're on as a club and a team. And yeah, going back to the kind of the first point in the how looking back on the last few years, I do think that off the field we've only been able to reach more schools and go into more clubs and have more away trips and more memories and have more kids now come to the games in the stadiums and ultimately I think we have to, as a club, understand that there's in sport there is going to be this natural. I mean, even in that first season, it wasn't plain sailing. There was times where there were peaks and troughs in performance and results but I think having this kind of united mentality that every game and every season we have to go one step closer to one area improving as a club and growing that connection between players and fans and players, fans and the community. And if we constantly improve and secure those bonds and ties each year, that the best is definitely yet to come. It's not been and gone. The best is very, very much yet to come, and these next generations of soccer players is just highlighting that.
A couple more questions over in the chat from Robert. What do you feel is the biggest difference between U.S. and English football, and why is Earl far superior to Jacob?
Well, US and English football is an interesting question now, because if you're referring to the Premier League, I mean, that's an international league. I mean, I sit here in front of this television and watch the Premier League, and I cannot believe how good the quality is. It is unbelievable. The pace, the decision making, the physicality, just everything is absolutely unbelievable, and that ultimately is, I believe, the most competitive and the best league, at least to watch in the world. But it is filled with international players. They're not all English players. I mean, the best players in that league aren't from England. I mean, the best striker in there right now is from Norway. So we can't. I don't know if that's English football. But I guess the answer to that question will be shown in the World Cup, and England have never beaten the US in an international tournament, if I'm right. And so I'm not particularly looking forward to that game, because I really don't think that's going to be easy for England at all. And so, yeah, biggest differences, we'll find out in a few weeks' time.
What about the lower levels of English soccer compared to something that's comparable, like the USL, something like that, where it's a little more 1-to-1 instead of apples to oranges?
Yeah, good question. I think the quality of football, you'll always find quality players, but the culture of football is very different. I mean, lower league in England, it is absolutely results based. And so you're finding less of you have the ball, we have the ball, possession based football. A lot of it can be very direct. How can we get the ball in the opponent's box as quickly as possible? How can we put pressure on that way? And also, the fans enjoy the combative nature of the sport in England. That's part of it. In America, somebody will get a yellow card, and it's sort of, I don't know how to describe it. Not taboo, but it's that's really sad, or hey, you shouldn't have got that. And in England, somebody would get it. I'm not saying this is great, by the way, but somebody might get a yellow card for just an honest, good tackle that they've accidentally mistimed. They get a yellow card for it in England, and the fans of that team are stood up cheering. They love it. They love the fact that their player's gone all out to try and win the ball, mistimed it, unintentionally, caught the lad. But there's small differences in the game that the fans really in England appreciate, that combative nature and seeing their players, the will and want to win. And I know we have that at our club here at New Mexico United, but it is definitely accentuated in compared to the rest of the league in England, where people, that's very, very important to the fans. When a lot of fans in local blue collar towns in England don't have a huge amount of money, and they're paying to watch games, and if their team's not going to win, they better have left it all on the field.
Yeah, and I think that's something that you've spoken to in the past. I want to say we talked about it a few years ago, is the difference between the pyramid in England and the academy structure, and the promotion and development of the youth product compared to here in the US. And you've now you said you've been out and seen some of the local high schools and the local clubs, and you've seen that level of talent. And there's actually going to be tournaments the next 2 weekends up at the soccer complex with teams from Colorado, New Mexico, Texas, I think Arizona coming in as well. And so do you think that the US is finally starting to catch up even the slightest amount to where the English football development is at? Or do you think that the US still has some developing to do?
I mean, both. I think this sport is still relatively new in comparison to other sports in this country and in comparison to football elsewhere in the world. And I think it's amazing the pace at which the sport has actually grown in this country. I mean, the proof is, you watch the Premier League, you can watch any given game, there'll be an American player in a squad. And if you're watching Leeds play, there'll be 3 or 4 American players playing against Liverpool away, winning the game. And so nobody can say that the sport isn't improving or the quality of player improving in this country, because we're seeing it with our own eyes. And we'll see in the World Cup, that'll be another kind of litmus test in seeing how far the country has come. But from what I can see, and I'm not the oracle of all footballing information, but from what I can see, as far as youth development in this country, it's in a fantastic place right now, and it's only going to get better and better. The other thing I would add to that is, this is a big country, and England is the size of North Carolina. You can fit 7 of us in Texas. So to set up a fully fledged, functioning, well-oiled machine of an academy system is not the same as doing it in the whole of America, where you already have some systems in place and some getting replaced and some getting instated. But with every move that's made, I do believe that it is a step forward in the development of young players. And I think that has been a priority that we're now seeing the fruit of, that had been planted a few years ago. And I can only see this country going on leaps and bounds in the quality of player, the quality of coaching, the quality of teams. And who knows what could happen this World Cup.
Well, I think we've seen the USL just since 2019 when you joined, when New Mexico United joined. I see a difference in quality from 2019 to 2022 just in the USL. And then you look at players like Diego Luna and Jose Gallegos, and the list can go on of players that have come up through the USL and then transferred over to Europe to a top tier, a higher tier T league. Wow. Anyways, and I think that it's only going to get, you know, better and better with guys like Nava coming up through us, and our academy that we talked about briefly earlier, and the high performance program that was adopted before the academy was even in existence, and you just see what New Mexico is doing to do that, and you know that several of these other USL clubs are doing the same thing, where they're have their academy and they're lower league or even younger than the academy teams and stuff like that. And you mentioned you're going to be working with the academy more in the future. Are you going to be able to make it to the playoff games next week, or?
So I'll actually be prepping for my B license course, which is going to be in Palm Springs, which is coming up in a few weeks. I would love to be there. The academy lads are brilliant. There's such good young men and very good football players, and I've had a lot of time with them over the past few years, and watching them play, and even playing with them a couple of times here and there when I'm needing to kind of catch up on minutes and things. And it's an exciting time for soccer in New Mexico when looking at the youth players. There's some brilliant players in there.
Are there with the academy games not being streamed or anything like that? I live 2.5 hours away from Albuquerque. Earl lives outside of town, and then, I've got 3 kids and a full-time job. We can't always make it to the academy games like I would love to, but since we can't make it, and we can only kind of follow through social media and stuff, do you have some names for us that you think might have a chance at making it to the big club in the next year or two?
Well, it's difficult for me to be able, if I'm working with these lads, right? So, picking out names and saying names of
right.
young men who I think have a better chance than others would be
right.
Not that it would be impartial, but it would be like, there's no way I could say to a
Fair.
child that they couldn't, because I've had, I've experienced that same thing, and I've experienced that on the other side, that being told it's always somebody else, and it's always this guy, and it's always this, and that was, and that, I was the other guy on the team, I was always the guy who it wasn't. And not to say that, these players have gone and done fantastic things, but I think that the important thing is that they have quality coaches, and good leaders and mentors and good coaches, and I think they have both of those in Luke and Junro, who are there currently, and they had that in previous academy coaches who were there, and we're seeing the fruits of that. And it's a well-run organization. The training sessions are so professionally run. I mean, these academy lads are treated like professionals when they walk in, and they're expected to act like professionals when they set foot on our training facility. And some of them, every now and then have hopped in with our practices when we've needed numbers and building out, and they've done brilliantly well. And as long as they're committed to that growing mindset and improving, there is nobody can say to any of these lads that you will or won't make it. They have to believe it is in their hands.
I wanted to ask you too, and we've talked about it multiple times. You've been here since 2019, one of the inaugural players. You played under Troy's system. You've now played under Zach's. What has been the evolution like going from Troy to Zach? And because we get to watch from the eagle eye view, we get to look top down. Jacob and Earl like to be down on the pitch, watching it that way. I look at it up top, and I've had several conversations with guys about what you guys are doing. On social media, some people refer to Zach as Troy 1.5 in terms of tactics and systems that he runs out there. What's the evolution been like, and do you see Zach implementing more changes to that system as the club becomes more his, so to speak?
Yeah, well, I mean, ultimately, as a coach, you have your style and and how you view the game and what you want in your philosophy of how you view the game, but also you have to adapt to many different things. And the quality of player that you have at the time, the form of the players, injuries, and you have to be able to adapt and change for these certain things. Troy had in the first year a very specific style that he wanted to see us perform and play, and kind of as we grew through our time, players that were available for us to sign, good quality players, meant that for us to play all the quality players we had, we might need to make changes of system here and there. And now playing under Zach, we're a team who is much more adaptable than we were first year, and we were much more able to adjust and change as we saw fit to how we wanted to break opponents down, how we wanted to expose opponents from what we saw as their weaknesses, and so became a team who were much more adaptable. And ultimately, there isn't one way to play the game. We've seen with the highest level of football in the world, you can win leagues and do great things with a number of different systems. But I do think it's important for the one thing that is important is you have the way that you want to play, and your players buy into that, and that the messages are consistent, and that the plan is there, and I do believe it is, and I think it's us players have to ultimately execute those plans in 90 minutes on the field.
I think that's something that a lot of supporters miss sometimes, is that you guys spend all week game planning and training and implementing the system that Zach wants you guys to do on Saturday or Sunday, whenever it may be. And there's a lot that can affect that throughout the game. You talk about what the other team is doing, if something's working, if it's not, you have to adapt. And so I think that's something where a lot of supporters who don't necessarily follow the sport as much as we do, or is anywhere near as involved as you as a player, they don't always see that. And so
they also may be upset that we lost the game, which they're fully within their right to. If we go out there and like I said before, if they don't feel like they've seen enough or seen what they want to see, then they're fully within their right to be upset at that.
I'll be honest, us as media, we see the comments, and Earl and Jacob kind of engage on Facebook a little bit. I do more Reddit and Twitter and things like that. And so, looking at the comments and just trying to be
a little bit,
just trying to explain, what we're seeing. And even then we may not always be 100% correct in what we're seeing, because we study the games, we watch them, we try to understand, what Zach wants you guys to do. And so people who are new to the sport, there's been people in the press box even that have said, hey, why did they do this? Why did they do that? And so I think at times, if the supporters had a better understanding of why something happened or why a particular system was put in, that they would kind of understand it a little bit more. What's your take on that?
I think ultimately in this profession, you've got to win games, and you have to play entertaining football. We're an entertaining business. That's what we do. And whether you're Manchester City, Liverpool, New Mexico United, or you're playing in Little Kickers that I watched tonight, you want these kids to play exciting, entertaining football, and you want them to win. And the system, the tactics can change from game to game, or it can from team to team. But why you turn on and watch your team is because you want to be entertained, and you want your team to win games. And ultimately, knowing the minute details about why we would want this player here or this player here, it may be of interest to some people, but I think for the majority of people, they invest their time and money into a team because it brings them great entertainment memories, and because they want to be involved in the team that wins.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So I have one, and obviously we're all here because we love the sport, we love the club. We're all invested, and we certainly do want to see the club do well. We want to see you guys do well on the pitch, and pick up those wins every single week. We know it's not going to happen. That's not going to stop us from from saying, hey, we want it. But I think it's something that as sports fans, that it just comes with the territory. So.
Absolutely.
I've got one final topic, at least from my perspective, and I don't know if Jacob or Earl have anything else to add after this, but we've talked about it a little bit throughout the night. The World Cup starts in about 14 days, give or take. We did have a question over in the chat from Robert. England versus U.S., what is your prediction? You've already said that England has not necessarily played well against the U.S. in international tournaments. Looking at the field,
either that or the US have played very well.
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly look at it that way. So I want to ask you two questions in particular. Looking at obviously Group B, England, Iran, the US, and Wales. Who do you think comes out of this group? Number one, and then number two. I was talking to Will Seymour yesterday during his press conference after he signed his contract, and he gave me his favorites to win. He felt like Germany had a good shot. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think what's interesting about that Group B is every matchup is fused somehow in something not related to football, which for England is the last thing we need. Every game, US, Iran, England, Wales, England, USA. I mean, just every game has something more to it than just football, which doesn't, that suits historically the US and your approach to sport and the World Cup when the last time you were in it, and England, that hasn't necessarily suited us. There is a fair amount of pressure on England always, and never mind, this group of players in particular, with them being so good at football. The group, I couldn't. I feel like in some strange way, what I say will in somehow alter the history of the future of how the games are going to go. I don't know. I really don't know as far as the end of the group. I think that Wales have some real talent and weapons in there that can really hurt you. And I don't think that England USA game is going to be what people think it will. We've never beaten you in a tournament. We've never beaten you competitively, and I think that's going to be a good game of football. The US, there's very little pressure on this group of players. They're young, they're hungry, they are good football players. And we've had some big injuries in the past few weeks. And look, if we don't have the likes of Kyle Walker, Reece James, Ben Chilwell, I mean, these are big injuries to our squad. And I don't know. I think it's going to be an interesting group. It's a lot going on with the fixtures, like I said. And I hope to see some quality football. And as far as the World Cup as a whole, I think France released their squad today. That's a brilliant squad. Germany's team is very, very good. England have a good squad of players. Don't know. It could be the US. Who knows? Imagine if the US won. What would you guys do if the US won the World Cup?
Pass out.
US soccer would burn as a whole. That's what would happen.
I don't know. I haven't even let myself think that we'll get out of the group, let alone that we could win the thing. And honestly, I mean, if you look at that, if you just put our lineup and you look at our lineup versus like France's lineup, Oh my gosh, France is freaking
Yeah, but if you
stacked.
put your line up against Italy's lineup, you would say the same thing, and they didn't even qualify.
True. And as we know, once you get on the pitch, anything can kind of happen on any given day.
Yeah.
But if we're just looking at odds and stuff like that, I haven't let myself get to the point where
And
like
history,
and if we come out and we
Yeah.
start off hot and we can win the group and win a match or two in the knockout rounds, then maybe I can get that feeling. But until then, I'll be happy with every match result that we get.
Yeah, it's a good point you've made. I think you in World Cups, excuse me, and international tournaments, you find there's the odd result, that happens that you don't expect, but generally, the team that does win it is the best team.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't really think of the last time that didn't happen. Maybe your
Germany,
Greece
Brazil?
and
Yeah, but I mean, Germany
Yeah.
wasn't like an underdog, like a big underdog
Well,
there, or even an underdog at all.
Germany were the better side.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone can. What you mean when they won 7-0?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they won the whole. They were absolutely unbelievable. They were sensational that tournament. They were unbelievable.
Mhm.
And I think the last time I could think of something not happening like that was the Euros when I was the first Euros I watched when Greece won the Euros somehow.
Right.
That's probably the last time that I think something like that happened. And I don't know, this World Cup with the timing of it, with the place, with some of the countries that qualified, it could be the time that something strange happens like that. It sort of has that feeling to it. You never know. But I just hope it's exciting. I hope it's good, exciting football, and I hope England perform how they have done in recent tournaments.
Yeah, I've been looking at the roster releases as they come out. Men's national team put out theirs today. Interesting to say the least. I think I agree with Robert. I think we're a little too young this year. Jacob, I think your take of us possibly winning one or two matches in the knockouts. I think that's I don't know. To me, that's a little bit of a stretch. But
I did not say that was going to happen.
Yeah,
I said that if that happened, then maybe I would start dreaming about winning it. But I did not say that was going to happen.
Okay,
just to be clear.
Yeah. No, fair enough. But I saw Brazil's squad come out today, and that roster is just stacked top to bottom. Like I think Brazil is going to be a club to watch in the tournament.
Yeah, it's just a team you have to watch. No matter who they're putting in that squad, you just have to watch Brazil play. I mean, they just have such unbelievable culture around football there. It's just amazing. But yeah, they do have a very, very good squad this year.
Yeah. David Carl did say that he is saying U.S. to the quarterfinal. Just so you know, he did put that out in the chat. And
I love that.
And it's not impossible. I wouldn't say it's probable, but it's not impossible by any means.
Yeah, I think if we get some momentum, I think coming out of Group B, I think you got the U.S. and England coming out. I just, as dangerous as MLS Cup champion Gareth Bale is, I just don't see Wales coming out of that group, and I don't think Iran's got enough.
Why do you have to hurt David right now? Why do you have to hurt David right now?
I said that more for your benefit, Jacob. But
well, I just come at it from a soft heart here. David had a miserable Saturday, I'm sure, with his Phillies and Union losing. And did any of you guys watch that match?
I was reffing, so.
Did you happen to watch the MLS Cup final, Brucey?
No, I was at the high school state final.
That's right. It was probably the craziest game of soccer I have ever seen.
I've heard it was unbelievable. Yeah,
it was incredible. And then you mentioned Gareth Bale. I mean, he just limps through probably 20 minutes, and then somehow finds a way to rise up over a 6'6" center back that was probably the MVP of the game to that point. And just crazy to me. So
I've got horrible visions about him doing exactly the same thing to England.
As long as he does it to you guys and not us, I'm okay with that.
David
Oh, I
also
don't
said
wanna think about the World
Argentina
Cup.
over Brazil in the final. So
Argentina over Brazil. That's a bold, semi-bold take, I think.
gonna be interesting. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Of course, we are gonna have World Cup content coming out here over the next few weeks. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. Like I'm looking forward to this. Brucey, do you have any like World Cup memories? Have you been able to go to any matches or qualifiers or anything like that?
No, never gone. But I think just watching with my family and friends back home, and the English pubs with it on the television, and everyone's round, and England score, and the beers all just get thrown up in the air, like those sort of memories when you're a kid, and it just seems so magical. I mean, the country just stops, doesn't it? And yeah, the flag's all flying and people in England. I mean, it's just such a good time in England. And it'll be interesting with it being obviously the winter months there now, because usually it's the summer in England, the World Cup's going on, and it's just a pretty magical time to be in England. But yeah, I've never been to an international game ever in my life. So
I'm actually
On the
happy
bucket
to say
list.
that me and Brucey have something in common.
I'm sure we've got more than that in common.
Well, yeah, because there's also beer flying at my house all the time too. So
Beer flying at my house all the time. That's good. That's good.
All right, I think that's gonna just about do it for us this evening. Brucey, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time. Do you guys have any
Thank you,
final
guys.
thoughts or questions before we get out of here?
No.
Okay.
I don't have a question. I just it's been such a pleasure to watch you for the last 4 seasons. Your philosophy about going out there and giving it your all, whether the touch is off or the shot is off, is something that I know is not lost on the fans. And speaking personally, yeah, just I thoroughly enjoy watching you out there on the pitch, and then to look at what you've done in New Mexico, coming from England, and and just embracing us and our culture here. It means the world to me to have people come from somewhere other than New Mexico and see how great New Mexico can be. Being born and raised here, getting us finally kind of on the map with people like yourself is special to me. And I just thank you so much for everything that you've done for the club and the community. And I can't wait for the next 2 years seeing you out there giving it your all, both on and off the pitch.
No, that's very kind, mate. And likewise, I feel the same for yourself, Jacob, and all of you. Like I love this state. I mean, I just think this state has so much to offer. And the when people ask me, what's your favorite thing about living in New Mexico? And there's some amazing things, and the beauty and the natural beauty and history is incredible. But the best thing about being here are the people. 100%, no question. The people that I've been fortunate to meet and the relationships that I've built, and the people that I haven't, just amazing people all over this state, and here in Albuquerque, Santa Fe, Cruces, just all over, just an amazing kind of mindset and group and community of people here that deserve for this state to be really talked about and put on the map, and for people to love and know. And I've just felt so honored and fortunate to be here and land here. And it's just, great to hear that you feel like something's been given back to the people here, and there's much more to do. So I'm looking forward to the next 2 years of getting to know more of you guys and spending more time with you.
Yes, awesome. With that, I think Seth and Earl, if you got nothing else, thank you for those in the chat, and we'll be looking forward to the next 2 years with Brucey here, and you can catch us next week 9:00, either Tuesday or Wednesday. We'll figure that out and let you guys know on our social media. And again, Brucey, David, Carl, who's behind the scenes here, thank you both for being here and taking almost an hour and a half of your night on a Wednesday night. And just couldn't thank you enough. So everybody watching, until next time, Somos Unidos.